The small-town diner buzzed with chatter as Daniel sat in the corner booth, his worn-out hoodie hiding his true identity. He picked up the menu, but his focus shifted when he heard a muffled sob from the kitchen. A waitress, barely holding herself together, wiped her tears before forcing a smile for customers. His grip tightened on the fork. What had pushed her to this breaking point, and why did no one seem to notice? Daniel sat in the dimly lit corner of the diner, his hoodie pulled up just enough to blend in. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, but his mind was elsewhere. He was not here just for a meal. He was here to observe, to understand what had gone wrong in one of his own restaurants. A waitress hurried past his table, her footsteps unsteady. Her name tag read Emma. She placed plates down with a forced smile, but the moment she turned away, that smile vanished. As she disappeared into the kitchen, Daniel heard it. A choked sob, quickly muffled. He set his fork down, every muscle in his body tensing. Through the narrow window into the kitchen, he caught a glimpse of her. Emma was standing near the sink, her hands gripping the counter as her shoulders trembled. No one paid attention. The cooks continued flipping pancakes, the cashier chatted with a customer, and the manager sat in the back, eyes glued to his phone. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had built this diner from the ground up. It was supposed to be a place of warmth, a second home for employees and customers alike. But something was wrong. Very wrong. A gruff voice cut through the air. "You do not get to cry on the job, Emma. If you cannot handle it, leave." Daniel's hands curled into fists. The voice belonged to the manager, a man named Rick. He was supposed to lead with respect, not cruelty. Emma straightened, blinking rapidly to fight back her tears. I am sorry. I will be fine." "Good," Rick muttered, turning away. Emma took a shaky breath and stepped back into the dining area, pasting on that same fake smile. But Daniel saw it now, the exhaustion, the weight of something heavy pressing down on her. He reached for his coffee, but his appetite was gone. He needed to know more. Why was she so broken? And why had no one stepped in to help? As she approached his table, Daniel met her eyes. "Rough day?" he asked casually. Emma stiffened but quickly forced a nod. "Just a little tired," she said, setting down his plate. He could tell she was lying. Daniel watched as Emma hurried away, her shoulders tense, her movements mechanical. She was exhausted, but it was more than just fatigue. Something deeper was weighing on her. He took a slow sip of his coffee, eyes following her as she moved between tables, smiling at customers who barely noticed her. He had spent years building this company, believing his diners were places of comfort, not just for customers, but for the staff who worked tirelessly to keep them running. But tonight, watching Emma struggle, he felt a bitter disappointment. How long had this been happening under his nose? Rick, the manager, stepped out of the kitchen, arms crossed as he scanned the floor. His eyes landed on Emma, and his expression darkened. "Table 6 is still waiting," he barked. Emma flinched and nodded quickly, grabbing a pot of coffee. As she passed Daniel's table, her hand trembled, spilling a few drops onto the floor. She froze, eyes widening in fear. Rick was on her in an instant. "Are you serious?" His voice was low, sharp. "Do you even know how to do this job?" I am sorry," she stammered. Daniel felt something inside him snap. He set his cup down, slow and deliberate. "It was just a few drops," he said, his voice calm but firm. Rick turned, eyeing Daniel with irritation. "And who are you?" "Just a customer," Daniel said, leaning back. "One who does not enjoy watching people get humiliated over nothing," Rick scoffed. "This is none of your business." Emma swallowed hard, gripping the coffee pot as if it was the only thing keeping her steady. "It is okay," she whispered. "I will clean it up." But Daniel saw the truth. It was not okay. It had never been okay. He had seen enough. Pushing his plate aside, he stood. "Actually, it is my business." His voice carried just enough authority to make Rick hesitate. Emma looked up at him, confused. "Sir, please." Daniel held up a hand, silencing her gently. His gaze locked onto Rick. "Let us step outside." Rick smirked, rolling his eyes. "You want to take this outside? Over some clumsy waitress?" Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. He had not planned to reveal himself yet, but Rick had just made his choice very easy. "Over an employee you have mistreated for far too long," Daniel said. "And as the owner of this diner, I have had enough." Rick's smirk vanished. Emma's breath caught. The entire diner fell silent. The diner went completely silent. Conversation stopped, forks froze mid-air, and every pair of eyes turned toward Daniel. Rick's face twitched in confusion before he let out a dry laugh. "You? The owner?" He shook his head. "Nice try, buddy." Daniel pulled his wallet from his pocket and flipped it open, revealing his corporate ID with his full name, Daniel Carter, CEO of Carter's Diners. The name everyone in the company knew. Rick's smirk crumbled. His face lost its color as he stepped back. I did not know. That much is obvious," Daniel said coldly. "Because if you did, you would have never treated an employee like this under my roof." Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the coffee pot, her eyes darting between them. You are really him?" she whispered. Daniel gave her a small nod. "And I am not happy about what I just witnessed." The other employees exchanged shocked glances. A cook in the kitchen peeked through the window, eyes wide. Even the customers were stunned, whispering among themselves. Rick swallowed hard. "Look, this is just a misunderstanding. Emma has been making mistakes all night. I was just keeping things in order." Daniel's expression remained unreadable. By publicly humiliating her? By making her work under fear? His voice hardened. "Tell me, Rick, how long has this been your idea of leadership?" Rick opened his mouth, then shut it. Sweat beaded at his temple. I just run things the way they need to be run." Daniel exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Then you are unfit for this position." Emma gasped softly, her lips parting. Rick took a step forward, lowering his voice. "Look, let's talk privately, all right? You do not need to make a scene." "This is not a scene," Daniel said. "This is accountability." He turned to Emma. "Tell me the truth. Has he treated you like this before?" Emma hesitated, her throat working as she struggled to speak. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. Rick glared at her, his jaw tightening. A silent warning. Daniel noticed. His patience snapped. "Emma," he said gently, stepping between her and Rick, "you do not have to be afraid." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, then exhaled shakily. "It is not just me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He treats all of us like this. We are scared to speak up because we need this job." Daniel turned back to Rick, his gaze ice cold. "Not anymore." Rick's eyes darted around. "Wait, what are you—" "You are fired," Daniel said, effective immediately. The entire diner erupted into gasps. Rick's face turned beet red. "You cannot do that." Daniel arched a brow. "I own this place. I can do whatever I want." Rick sputtered, looking around as if someone would come to his defense, but no one did. The employees avoided his gaze. The customers watched with interest. He was alone. Daniel gestured toward the door. "Leave." Rick hesitated for one long second. Then, with a bitter curse under his breath, he turned and stormed out. As the door slammed shut behind him, the tension in the diner finally broke. The employees looked at one another, shock and relief mixing on their faces. Emma wiped a tear from her cheek, staring at Daniel, as if she could not believe what had just happened. "Now," Daniel said, rolling up his sleeves, "let's fix what he broke." The silence in the diner stretched for a long moment. Then, one by one, the employees looked at each other, first in disbelief, then in relief. A heavy weight had just been lifted from their shoulders. Emma's hands still trembled as she set the coffee pot down. I cannot believe this," she whispered. "He is really gone?" Daniel gave her a reassuring nod. "And he is never coming back." He turned to the rest of the staff. "From now on, No one works under fear in this place. That is a promise. The tension slowly melted from the air, replaced with something warmer. Hope. The cook in the kitchen, a middle-aged man with grease stains on his apron, finally stepped forward. "Boss, I do not mean any disrespect, but why did you come here undercover?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I started this company with a vision. These diners were supposed to be more than just places to eat. They were supposed to feel like home. Lately, I felt like something was off. Profits were steady, but employee turnover was high. People were leaving, but no one was saying why." His gaze swept over them. "Now I know." Emma lowered her eyes. "We never spoke up because we thought no one would listen, and we needed these jobs." Daniel's expression softened. "You should never have to choose between respect and a paycheck." He glanced around. "Who here has ever been mistreated by Rick?" Hands hesitantly started to rise. Almost every employee lifted theirs. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had been too distant, too focused on the big picture, while people like Rick poisoned the very foundation of what he built. He would never let that happen again. "I owe all of you an apology," Daniel said. "This should have never happened under my watch." He turned to Emma. "And you, especially. I saw how hard you worked tonight despite everything." Emma blinked rapidly, as if fighting back tears. I just did what I had to do." Daniel smiled. "No, Emma. You did more than that. You held this place together while your own manager tore it down." A new determination settled in him. "I need someone to help rebuild the culture here. Someone who understands what this place should be. Someone like you." Emma's eyes widened. "Me?" Daniel nodded. "I am offering you the manager position." A collective gasp went through the diner. Emma took a shaky step back. "But I do not have any experience." "You have everything that matters," Daniel said. "Compassion, hard work, strength." He smiled. "I will personally train you, if you want it." Emma stared at him, her lower lip trembling. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes, I want it." The employees erupted into applause. A few customers joined in. For the first time that night, Emma smiled. A real, genuine smile. Daniel exhaled, feeling something inside him settle. He had come here expecting to fix a business problem. Instead, he had found something far more important. "All right," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Now who needs a break? Because I think it is about time I learn how to serve a table." Laughter rippled through the diner as employees stepped forward, showing him the ropes. For the first time in a long time, the place felt alive. As Daniel picked up a tray and took his first hesitant steps toward a table, he knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning.